anyway, all of that to say that is what Mama is dealing with, and we have established that by these 3 doctors and 3 different opioids. Clearly, no one needs that many, which was one of the comments that the editor gave me. They were like, no one needs that many opioids and that many doctors. They do if they're addicted. They do if they're addicted. And that is something I want to touch on. When you are submitting to these competitions, sometimes things are up to the interpretation of the judge and their personal preferences and their personal biases. Clearly, the judge who made these comments does not understand the opioid crisis. I keep wanting to say opioid crisis. There are people who don't understand the opioid crisis. And so sometimes as an author, you just have to stick to your guns. You know you have the right thing, and no matter what your editor says, they may just be talking from their own personal biases. If you believe in what you've written, keep it. So I kept it. I know it takes up words and it's a flash fiction and I could free up space for more, but it was important to me to make it clear that Mama's not just in pain. She is in pain, but she's not just in pain. She is addicted to opioids and it is ruining her and her daughter's life. Mama's not really paying attention to Crystal. She's relying on Crystal. Crystal is just a teenager. We established that because she's going to beauty school. She's still just 17. By extension, she's relying on her 17-year-old daughter's income to pay for her opioid addiction, which happens. It happens to people. This is not just a one-off scene. This is a habitual lifestyle that these 2 women are going through, and that is something that the editor missed, in which she didn't pass me on because she did feel like this story was about a 17-year-old throwing a tantrum. What you see is this is not a 17-year-old throwing a tantrum. This is a 17-year-old who is coming to a head with her mother over her mother's opioid addiction. So I want to continue on because I'm still 17. Mama, why do you need so many of these? Crystal picked up the bottles and silently read each label. Dr. Covington, Dr. Edwards, Dr. Gupta, fentanyl, Mapana, Vicodin. The doctors wouldn't give them to me if I didn't need them, Mama assured her, coughing deep and raspy after her first sip of coffee. I don't think they're helping. You barely walk around without me, and what are you going to do when I'm up and gone on my own one day? So Crystal says, what are you going to do when I'm up and gone on my own one day? So on this one, it's too wordy. One of the comments I got was this sentence doesn't make much sense because there's just too much going on. So you can barely walk without me, which implies that Mama is stuck in her chair most of the time. And what are you going to do when I'm gone one day? I could delete this. And I think I will. I'm going to keep it out. And the first comment that I got from one of the editors was, I don't understand this line. Isn't she leaving to work right now? Yes, she is. What she meant was I'm gone on my own one day. So I added that line in originally. I think now I disagree with that comment. I think most of the United States understands what it means when a kid says, what are you going to do when I'm gone one day? Implying, what are you going to do when I leave the house one day? So I really don't think it requires that clarification. So Mama says, where are you going? So we're going to take out that apostrophe and put in going so that people understand. We're also going to add in the word, where are you going? So that it makes more grammatical sense, because like I said before, dialect is kind of getting pushed out in literature lately. You can add in key phrases and key words like ain't, because most people understand what the word ain't means. But as a whole, you want to make sure that you're being careful of where you're putting apostrophes and vernacular phrases and dialects and accents. All right, so where are you going? Mama demanded. Nowhere yet, Mama, but the beauty school. We're going to leave this M dash because we're going to make it clear that Mama is interrupting her. She's talking over her daughter. And this is a habitual thing. Nowhere yet, Mama, but the beauty school. That's right, you ain't. Mama sounded satisfied, nodding like a bobblehead. because you're my baby, and babies need their mama. So when we're speaking, it makes sense that you would add a pause there and that you would use a period to do the pause. In writing, it doesn't make sense. That was something that I did a couple of years ago. We're just going to go ahead and do a comma and a lowercase and, because that is what makes grammatical sense. That is what we're going to stick with. People will interpret it in their writing. I have to trust that people's media intelligence will put in that pause with a comma. But Mama, I'm going to leave home, and then what are you? M dash, again, her mother cuts her off because she doesn't want to talk about this subject. Crystal, I'm tired. Can you turn the TV on? She nodded tersely. So I'm going to put in the name Crystal because even though we know that the two of these are talking, we still want to clarify because it's a new paragraph. So Crystal nodded tersely, moving to the old boxy television and turning it on. This was meant to imply that the television is very old in that it's one of those old 80s, 90s televisions. But since we need to save words, I don't think we need boxy television. And in order to allow this piece to age with the audience, since we haven't established an actual year, we're just going to say old television, and people will then interpret that as they want. They'll imagine what old TV looks like. For me, old TV is that boxy one you had in the early 90s. But for a baby born in 2000 who's now a 24-year-old adult who may be reading this or even editing it, they may be imagining like a larger, flatter TV, one of those bulky plasma TVs that you would see hanging on people's walls. You know, everyone's going to have that differentiation. But those early 2000 babies may not even know what an old 90s boxy TV looks like. So when you say boxy, you're kind of alienating some of your audience and being able to define what an old television looks like to them. Besides, if we are reading this in modern day, we can imagine that this is 2024. That would make Crystal born in 2013. No, it should be 11. She was born in 2000 and... Why is this hard for me? So she would have been born in 2007, meaning she wouldn't even know what those bulky plasma TV screens were. Her vision of old television is something completely different than mine. So anyway, she turned on the TV. The morning talk shows babbled over them. She bent down and kissed Mama's forehead, hiding the flush on her face as she set the permission slip back on the side tray, making sure the pin pointed towards the signature line. I gotta go to work. So this isn't going to add any words, but I've got to go to work. So she nodded tersely. She moved to the old television and turned it on. I don't think I need that comma because those two are related. You may correct me on that. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's up to interpretation. Anyway, I'm taking it out. The morning talk shows babbled over them. Basically, Mama is drowning her out. She bent down and kissed Mama's forehead, hiding the flush on her face. So I don't think we need to add hiding the flush on her face. We're just going to take that out and say, because this is the important part. She sets the permission slip back on the side tray and points the pen towards the signature line. So Mama called after her as Crystal started out the front door. Don't let Clayton jack you around on the price. They're $5.30. I checked. Basically meaning that she's keeping track of the money. Yes, Mama, Crystal replied, feeling relieved but guilty as she left down the front steps and sequestered herself in the raggedy seat of her old car. So I don't think we need old car. We can just see raggedy seat, and then that will imply that it is an old car. So feeling relieved but guilty. I am not entirely sure what she feels guilty about, and I don't think that is the proper emotion she should be conveying here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say she's feeling relieved, and that's it. She's feeling relieved as she moves down the front steps and sequestered herself in the raggedy seat of her car. She gripped the wheel and took a deep breath. She gripped the wheel and took a deep breath, her face scrunching back tears. Where are you going? she mocked. So we did change Mama's dialogue down here or up here. Where are you going? So we are going to change this here because she is mocking Mama and we want to keep that clear. Where are you going? She mocked, rage boiling in her stomach as she stared out the trailer. Far away from you. Fentanyl, Apana, Vicodin. These I kept because it's her mental thought process going over those bottles, and it gives you an insight of what she's actually mad about. Maybe I could actually get some coffee if you'd leave me some of my money, huh? She slammed her palm against the steering wheel. So we're going to hail back to this previous conversation over here when Mama's upset because they don't have their own money. When are we getting our own? They don't have their own money to get coffee. She had to get coffee from work. And so Crystal's pulling this back out. Well, maybe I could actually get some coffee if you'd leave me some of my money. Hissing in pain, she pulled her hand back and clutched it to her stomach. Sobs broke. Familiar tears fell from her eyes, destroying her precious makeup. And here's where things start to become different for Crystal. She destroys her precious makeup. She says, I have to leave. This is the first time she's really thought about it. I have to leave. I don't have a choice. This is her moment where things are changing. This is no longer routine. She stared out the windshield towards home, minutes passing by. Half an hour late. 45 minutes. She chewed on the edge of her nail, spitting out chipped nail polish. Her knee bounced. Her eyes refocused on the rearview mirror, watching the end of her driveway. Now, we actually don't need this descriptor. This adds nothing to the story. It gives us no insight. We've already said she chewed on the edge of her nail. Spitting out chipped nail polish means nothing. So we're going to take that out. Her eyes refocused on the rearview mirror, watching the end of the driveway. If she turned left, we're going to take of it out of it, because that's a prepositional phrase. We don't need it. If she turned left, there was work and money for Mama. Right, there might be school and a future. But no certainties, no friends, and certainly no home. She sniffled softly, her demeanor falling. Ain't got nowhere to go. And we're going to add I ain't got nowhere to go, because ain't is fine. Everyone knows what ain't is. But it's an incomplete sentence without the I. The gears ground in reverse and her car buzzed out of the driveway. She went left, just like every day, and wiped her tears away. She harbored a little hope in her heart that one day she'd go right, but for now things remain the same. Okay, so that was the ending of the story. Originally, when I wrote the story, I felt like this was the appropriate ending because this is the reality for so many young people who go through this exact scenario. But this is when an editor made the comment, I like the story, it's well written, but it feels pointless. And I thought about it, and she was totally right. Like that was one of the most heartbreaking constructive feedback that I've ever gotten, was that the story was pointless. Like, I feel like if a story is written badly, but it has a point to it, you can be like, at least I made my point. I didn't make a point here. I simply gave a snapshot into the life of this 17-year-old girl who doesn't know what she's going to do with her life. And at the end of the story, she still doesn't know. So after I got off my high horse and after I got over myself and realized that that editor and judge was completely correct, that the story is pointless when I have this last paragraph going into it, I did make a different paragraph. So let me go to that one, because this was my first submission. And now we're going to go to the ending I put into the edited one. As you can see, I did change the title on this one. But let's look at how I ended it in this one, where I have 857